Robert and I are big fans of ship porn. We are the ship porn.
Come again.
Sounds like saying ship
You might sound like the wrong thing, buddy.
Spaceship porn.
Know about?
If you go over my internet history, you'll see me looking at the Enterprise refit.
No.
Not only is that clips, Gary, you throw and rub it right up to the front.
Why would you admit that?
At this point, who's still watching Star Trek? That's a serious question. Like, who is still watching this
just
shit?
us right here. That's
I have not heard of this show until now.
Robert, can you answer that question? Who's still watching Star Trek?
Well, there is a small, I think, devoted fan base to these modern. I mean, here's the thing. I want to preface these statements by saying, look, Star Trek debuted 1966, and like the Bond films, people discovered James Bond at different parts of their lives in different generations, and everybody has their favorite Bond. So Star Trek has kind of been something people have been able to discover on their own since then. But I would say one of the problems with modern Star Trek is I call it a product of fraudulent creation. At first, when they brought back the Star Trek, the bad robot era, which started in 2009, what did they do? They decided, let's go back and retell the first tale of Kirk and Spock meeting. Up until this point, Star Trek had either gone forward or gone back and created all new characters, different situations. You went from the original series to Next Generation, which was like 100 years later. Then you went to Deep Space Nine. Then you went to Voyager. Then you went back and did Enterprise, which is a prequel that showed the founding of the Federation. So all of Star Trek from 66 to 2005 was doing something new, creating new characters, new situations, delving into that whole universe. And it represented multi generations of storytelling going through the latter half of 20th century America. Well, then they make the decision in 2009 to go back for the very first time in Star Trek history and retell the story of Kirk and Spock and turn them into people that might be, as they thought, more appealing to a younger generation. They're constantly going after an audience that I would dare say does not exist. They're trying to make Star Trek appeal to an audience that isn't interested. They think that, look, when I was a little kid, Star Trek appealed to me when I was 5. And it was an adult show, but I liked it when I was a little kid. And I think most of us, Gary, you were probably younger when you started watching Star Trek. It appealed to you even then. You didn't have to have a show pander to you as a child to get you interested in it. Star Trek never had to do that. And that's since 2009, everyone has tried to change fundamentally what Star Trek is to appeal to this younger audience who, by the way, ironically, is not interested.
I have certainly not seen nearly as many of the new Star Trek projects as I have seen the Star Wars ones. But I think on average, based on the response I've seen in some of the reviews and all the... I don't care about Star Trek as much, so it doesn't bother me nearly as much. But I feel like as bad as Disney Star Wars is, it feels like Star Trek is in actually a much worse place.
It is.
Yes, it Star Wars.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on Doctor Who, which is worse than this.
Well, like to Robert's point, I watched The Next Generation with my family when I was a teenager. The Borg whole episode, all those freaked me the fuck out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it drew you in, and my whole family, we would look forward to The Next Generation every week. It wasn't pandering to anyone. It was just Star Trek, and it was telling a good story, and it was telling stories about space exploration and all of this. And now, like, who the hell is watching this? I don't know a single person, not on this panel anyway, that has I never see it on my Twitter feed. I never see it on YouTube. I never see anyone talking about Star Trek. Never.
Kurtzman doesn't care. Right. Kurtzman Trek is Star Trek made by people who don't like Star Trek for people who don't like Star Trek. And Little Platoon had the best description of it yesterday on Open Bar. It's Star Trek for theater kids, because that's what Hollywood thinks that the modern audience is a bunch of theater kids.
Yikes.
There's also, one of the maddening things about this, when they talk about it destroys a whole quadrant, I don't think people understand how big that is.
That's big.
It would take tens of thousands of light years to cross a quadrant. If you exploded something that was traveling at the speed of light, it would take tens of thousands of years to destroy a quadrant. They don't get this.
Yeah.
They don't understand basic distances, and it's maddening. They had an episode back in the second season of Discovery where these red beacons,
the red
turned on
beacons, yes,
all across the galaxy, and they all turned on at the same time. And this imaging system saw, look, these beacons, and they were all throughout the Milky Way galaxy, as if there was no distance or time at all. These lights just turned on. Well, if you know anything about distances, it's not like Earth. Light is traveling from one beacon. Maybe it takes 5,000 light years to get to you. Another one's going to take 100,000. You couldn't do that and have lights turn on. It's because the kids who are writing this, they're not even theater kids. They're junior high theater kids that haven't barely got out of a science course. And at least Star Trek always had, with all of their fictional science, they made you believe when they came up with something like the transporter had rules. It was a line of sight device. It wasn't magical. In Star Trek 09, they made the transporter magical. So you would believe in the fiction. I always say that the best fiction is the most truthful. These shows don't even bother to try and explain any of their gobbledygook that they're trying to shove down our throats all the time.
And
I mean, if I want something shoved down my throat, I want it. I don't want to have it.
The big problem in Hollywood.
I want it to be a massive ship.
I want a big warp cell. Here's another dumb thing that the producers of Star Trek have said, that all of the continuity that was set up in the original Star Trek, which is all fictitious, did anyone believe that Star Trek was ever real? Was it supposed to be our history? No, it was similar, but it's an alternate universe. But the producers of modern Star Trek think that in order for audiences to be interested, that they have to make our real history that we're living through now, they have to keep adding it to the show's backstory. So as our history moves forward, because Star Trek started in 1966, that they keep having to change things. So in the Star Trek universe, the eugenics wars took place in the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not anymore, because they're like, well, we lived through the 90s and there really wasn't a eugenics wars. Well, I think anybody watching, I knew at 5 years old that we weren't going to have eugenics wars in the 1990s because it was a fictional show. It had a fictional backstory. There were no nuclear weapons platforms either. And it's just so dumb and wrong-headed.
It would be like, well, Back to the Future, that doesn't make any sense anymore because we lived through 2015 or whatever, and that didn't happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was no almanac.
Yeah.
We don't have hoverboards.
The Cubs almost made it to the World Series around the same time.
They did.
Interestingly
in
enough,
2016, they came damn close.
Yeah.
But that's exactly right, Ryan. It's like, we have to go back and retcon Back to the Future because Back to the Future 2 didn't happen that way.
And their attitude towards Star Trek fans is, why do you care about this stuff? And it's like, why are you fucking making it if that's your attitude? Like, it's ridiculous. So you could interpret that as the canon is erased, or you could interpret it as they didn't bother to check their own fucking canon. I would guess the latter, that like they just didn't do the research on their own fucking show. But
they didn't even do the research into Section 31 itself.
No.
Anybody who loves fiction, whether it's Middle Earth, take whatever fictional universe you love. Part of the fun of reading fantasy fiction, science fiction, is the world building. And alternative histories are a big genre in science fiction literature.
Oh, love them.
Everybody gets it. We saw like shows like The Man in the High Castle, where the Allies were defeated in World War II. Everybody understands that concept. We all get it. So this idea that they think the audience is too dumb to go with that, to go with this, to stick with their own fictional backstory is really frustrating. And what these writers are telling the audience is, we don't care about you.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't care. And which means they don't care about their own IP. I would say that writing like this show, if I was a shareholder and, the Skydance deal with Paramount, I would say every one of these bad shows chips away at the value of their own IP. The Book of Boba Fett destroyed a character that people have loved since 1980.
Yep.
When Boba Fett was introduced. And when that happens, you've diminished your entire franchise because Boba Fett was the basis of the Mandalorians. And now between the book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian season 3, well, the Mandalorians aren't so cool anymore. You guys have wrecked your own characters. And why do the corporate overlords put up with that? Because they don't know the difference.
They don't.
Yeah.
And that's why they shouldn't have their jobs.
I'm not going to say it was a money printing machine on the level of Star Wars or anything like that, but it was consistent income. It was a consistent revenue stream that came from a smaller audience, but that would buy the shit out of everything.
Yes.
A small, loyal audience that kept up with it year after year, decade after decade. A lot of Star Trek books that are out there as well.
Tons. My God.
A lot of Star Trek books.
Yeah, a lot.
Hundreds.
And they said, hey, you guys that are dedicated, fuck you. Let's get rid of all that. And you're going to care about the new shit now. And the new shit has no connection to the old stuff.
No.
This could apply to so many properties. Holy
Absolutely.
shit. I mean, it's literally what happens to every single property.
Well, that's the bigger picture here.
These are writers that are getting paid pretty good to work on these shows. And I just wonder, how are they getting hired? Like how does somebody like give you this script? And I understand they were retconning, they were Frankensteining this out of what the series was going to be. But think about it, like, you know, if you think about the great science fiction movies that we grew up watching, this doesn't pass muster. As I was sort of only kidding when I said it's like a Roger Corman or a Charlie Band movie from 1982. Science fiction has come so far in terms of like I was watching Torchwood's Children of Earth, which is a 5-episode series.
It's great.
That is infinitely better than this. And that was Torchwood, and that was done 15 years ago. And I would ask, how is it that shouldn't our entertainment be getting exponentially better? And you look at something like this, and it's how does this exist? Like, how is our civilization devolving? Do the people that are in charge of the money not know how awful this really is? Like, how do they not know? Their job, they have one job, which is to make entertainment. And when we live in a world where we've got The Sopranos and we've got Breaking Bad and we've got dozens of great TV shows, take your pick. There's great comedies out there. There's great crime thrillers. There's great fantasy shows. There's so much great writing. Why is it that Star Trek has to deal with this god-awful gobbledygook?
The wrong people are in charge of
people
it.
at the top.
Yes.
Too many
wrong
women.
No, I mean, it's the wrong people. There are good TV shows right now. They're going
A lot of them.
You're literally hiring the wrong people to put in charge of these projects.
I wasn't like all on board for Legacy, right? I like Star Trek Picard season 3. I liked it. That is an end. But there was a possible spin-off, Legacy, which united the fandom, what was left of it, more than I've seen in years. And it got shit canned by Kurtzman because of his fucking ego, because he wasn't involved in that. He wasn't happy that he got Terry Matalas made him look bad.
And he'd have to share the co-creator credit with Matalas.
And he let him go. And instead, we're getting Starfleet Academy, which is described as the Harry Potter of Star Trek. The Harry Potter of Star Trek. How about the fucking Star Trek of Star Trek?
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.